Hey there, SAT warriors. Welcome back to the channel. If you're preparing for the digital SAT, you've probably noticed that inference questions in the English section can be some of the trickiest to tackle. These questions often stump students. Now, again, I don't mean to say by predicting that know exactly what you want to pick up in order to complete that particular text, but have a basic understanding as to what is it that can possibly complete it. Based on everything that you read, everything that you understood, what information can possibly complete it, right? Based on that information, you will move on to the next step, that is option elimination. Now, again, even though you kind of have an idea as to what you require, you're not going to directly seek it exactly that particular understanding when you're looking at the options. I want you to eliminate your options first. I want you to get rid of all those options that you think are for sure not going to complete the text, right? Now, when it comes to the inference question types, there are some common elimination pointers as to how you can eliminate your options, which again we'll be seeing as we take up a particular question on this type. Now that you know all the 4 steps that you need to take up, we have to learn how to implement these steps, right? What is it that we need to do in order to implement these steps? Let's look at the first question. Now, we already know that this is an inference question type because of this question STEM, which says most logically completes the text. And this is an easy level question, right? So remember this is an easy level question where we are just trying to understand how do we implement whatever we have learned, right? Okay. Alright, so let's take up a medium difficulty level question now. The first step remains the same, that is read the question stem. As soon as you see logically completes, you should know this is an inference question type that you're dealing with. Now the second step is where you read the text and you try to connect the dots. Right? Here you are just trying to understand how is everything connected to each other and what can you pick up to complete the sentence that has been left incomplete over here. Logically, what is it that can complete this? Right? So let's go ahead and read this text. Songbirds learn to respond to and initiate their species songs from an early age. So we are talking about songbirds, and what can they do from an early age? They can respond to and imitate their species songs. They can do this at an early age. With each generation, small differences are introduced that result in distinct variations. So what's happening with each generation? There are some small differences that come into the picture, because of which what happens, there are distinct variations, and this is some extra information in between 2 dashes, so I'm going to read ahead. In distinct variations among geographically isolated populations of the same species. So we are talking about the same species, but this species is basically geographically isolated, right, in different locations. This species, the same species in different locations, can have distinct variations. This is what they are trying to say. A research study examined whether 12-day-old FH nestlings prefer local dialects over the unfamiliar dialects. Okay. Let's just try and understand this much, right, till this bit. What is this study all about? What are they trying to examine? They are trying to examine if this 12-day-old FH nestlings prefer local dialects over the unfamiliar dialects of the non-local FH. So again, we are still talking about FH, but these FH are basically non-local. They don't belong to the same location. So what would these 12-day-old FH prefer? Will they prefer the local dialects, or they will prefer the non-local dialects? Right? This is what they're talking about. This is what they're examining. Now there's a colon, so I know that the explanation is going to come up later. The more begging calls the nestlings made in response to a song, the stronger their preference. So in order to show their preference towards something, what do? They make more begging calls. So more the begging calls, more the preference towards a certain thing. Let's read ahead. The researchers found that nestlings produced more begging calls in response to their own dialect than to non-local dialects. So what did they prefer? They preferred their own dialects because they made more begging calls for their own dialects rather than to non-local dialects. This basically shows that they have a preference towards the local dialects, right? Let's read ahead. Since song preference plays a role in songbird mate selection. Okay, stop here, take a pause. Now what are they drawing? What kind of a connection they are trying to draw over here? They say that the song preference plays a role in what kind of a songbird mate they select. Right? So if they're responding to the local dialects more, then in their songbird mate selection, probably they will also select the local mate, right? They will prefer somebody who's local. Correct? This is what I can predict this information should consist of. Now understand, this is no more about the song preference. This is more about the songbird mate selection. Correct? So I hope you identified how this whole information about their preference towards a certain dialect, towards a certain song was further related to how they select their mate. Now, with this understanding, I'm not going to try and spend more time to understand what exact information is going to fill this up. But with all that I've been able to grasp, I will go ahead and eliminate my options. Let's look at A. So, FH nestlings' preference for their own dialect likely disappears as they mature to promote. Okay, let's just stop here. The option is very lengthy, so I want to find half part of it and see if everything is correct till here. Right? Now, what is it talking about? It's talking about the preference for their own dialect and it disappearing as they mature. Is that what we are talking about? The last sentence talks about the songbird mate selection, right? It's not about if the dialect preference is going to disappear as they mature or not going to disappear. This was not even discussed in the whole text. What happens as they mature? I don't know. The text is not even talking about it. So basically, you have to stick to what's been given to you in the text. You have to stick to the relationship that's been drawn in the text to really pick up the correct option. A is out because this is out of scope, or you can also call this irrelevant. Let's go to B. FH nestlings who show an early preference for their own dialect are likely to receive more food. Again, stop. It's about them receiving more food, right, from their caretakers. Did the text anywhere mention about how they can receive more food from their caretakers? In what kind of a preference will they receive more food from the caretakers? In what kind of a preference will they not receive more food from the caretakers? Their receiving food is not even discussed in the text. Again, I'm going to eliminate this because this is not even discussed. So, out of scope, right, or irrelevant. Let's look at C now. FH nestlings' preference for their own dialect likely drives them when they mature to reproduce. Now stop here. This is the connection that was drawn in the text in the last sentence as well. That their preference towards their own dialect decides what kind of a songbird mate, they will select. Right? So this whole situation drives them when they mature to reproduce with other FH from local rather than non-local. It makes complete logical sense to say that they will possibly select a local mate rather than somebody from the non-local population. Alright, so we are going to take up a hard difficulty level question now. So the question stem remains the same, so I'm not going to discuss this. Let's go and read the text. Okay, so what does it say? One theory behind human B suggests that it originated in a mostly ground-based ancestor that practiced four-legged knuckle walking. Let's take a pause. So what are we really talking about in this text? We're talking about a theory behind this. Right? So a theory related to human B. And what does it speculate? It says that it originated. How did it originate? It originated in a mostly ground-based ancestor who practiced four-legged knuckle walking like chimpanzees and gorillas do today. So basically it originated from the idea that the ground-based ancestors, they practiced a certain way of walking that is done by chimpanzees and gorillas today. And eventually evolved into moving upright on two legs. So basically the first thing that the humans did was knuckle walking, and then it evolved into moving upright on two legs. Great. Let's move to the next sentence. But recently, so the mention of but should tell you that there is some contradictory fact that's going to come up, right? And let's see what is it saying. Researchers observed another relative of humans, standing on two legs on tree branches and using their arms for balance while they reached for fruits. So now we are talking about O, which is basically nothing but another relative of humans. And what did they do? They used to stand on two legs, where they used this particular ability in order to help themselves, reaching up for fruits. That's basically, this movement helped them in doing something like this, where they could get their fruits, go stand on a tree branch, can use their arms and things like this, right? Now, what's happening because of this recent observation? Something is going to be changed, or in some way this recent observation is going to impact human beings evolution, right? These observations may suggest that. So this recent observation is doing something to the theory about human being. Now, what is that exactly? I'll have to go and read the options. But whatever this blank will consist of should be about how this particular new observation is impacting the theory behind human being or the evolution in human being. Let's go to our options now. Okay, let's look at A. B evolved because it was advantageous to a tree-dwelling ancestor of humans. Now, the recent observations of O mentioned in the text support this idea, right? It implies that standing on two legs could have helped tree-dwelling ancestors balance better and reach for food, like fruits, while in a tree canopy. This is consistent with the new evidence provided in the text about O. Since the text presents this new observation and implies that it challenges or adds to a traditional theory, option A logically makes sense. But again, like we always do, I'm not going to pick this up right away. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate B, C, and D. Let's read B now. B must have evolved simultaneously with knuckle walking and tree climbing. Now, option B says that B, knuckle walking, and tree climbing all evolved at the same time. However, the text doesn't provide evidence or reasoning behind this, right? Instead, the text contrasts the traditional ground-based knuckle-walking theory with new evidence that suggests a potential role of tree-dwelling behaviors in the evolution of bee. Therefore, this option is not the best as it's contradicting the information given in the text, right? Let's look at C. Moving between the ground and the trees would have been difficult without bee. Now, this option is basically talking about bee being necessary for transition between ground and tree environments. The text does not discuss or provide any evidence for movement between the ground and trees as a reason for bee evolution. Why did that bee evolution happen? I don't know. That the text is not talking about it. Instead, it focuses on the potential advantages of bee in either a ground-based or tree-based context. So this option is irrelevant because it's something that's not being talked about in the text. Irrelevant or out of scope. Let's look at D now. A knuckle-walking human ancestor could have easily moved bee in trees. Now, this particular option implies that a knuckle-walking ancestor could also have moved bee in trees, suggesting a versatility that the text does not directly support. While the text does mention O standing on two legs in trees, it does not indicate that a knuckle-walking ancestor would have easily transitioned. Right, there's no mention to it. The text is more focused on the adaptation to tree-dwelling behaviors rather than combining knuckle walking with bee. Therefore, this is also out because this is also irrelevant or out of scope. So see, I hope you understood how just knowing the text or connecting the dots in the text can lead you to your correct option. Now remember, the difficulty level for this question was hard, right? But because I was sure about what the text talks about and what it doesn't talk about, I could eliminate C and D and B clearly because this contradicted the text. These are the most common reasons how you can eliminate your options in the inference question type.